Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have Rob Ladowski, who is the CEO and director of Tango Firearms in Longwood in Florida. Hi, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Jack. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. So listen, Rob, we're just going to talk a little bit about, your background and how you got started and where you can see the firearms industry going in terms of training and what you do. So as far as I'm aware, you were a cop for over 20 years or so, plus you had military experience as well.
Yeah, I was a police officer here in Central Florida for 27 years. I also spent 12 years in the United States Army Reserve during that time, where I was also a military police officer and a criminal investigator.
So you've got a lot of experience from the ground up, basically, in terms of legalities, law enforcement, firearms, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
So when you decided to leave the force, what gave you the drive? What gave you the drive to do that and to concentrate on the firearms aspect of your skills?
Well, essentially, I first became a firearms instructor in 2008 while I was still with the police department, and I was a firearms instructor for my agency. Essentially, I was looking at retirement and retired in 2013, and then subsequently went to another agency for 2 years after that. So I fully left law enforcement in early 2015 and started focusing more on my company. I started Tango Firearms in 2012 before my actual retirement, and just been slowly building it up to this point. I'm a firm believer that how do I put this? I believe in the Second Amendment. I also believe that government needs some control on who has guns and who doesn't. But I'm a firm believer that everybody who owns a gun needs to have proper training and be fully aware of what the laws are regarding firearm ownership, as well as carrying concealed and defending themselves should they have to.
There's one thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about, because we've had some terrible tragedies in America. We had Sandy Hook, we've had what happened in Las Vegas, we've had the recent problems and terrible atrocity in Florida itself, on your home turf, so to speak. And everybody is calling for a change in firearms laws. But I think what seems to be important is the lack of training for people that want to be proficient with firearms, and also in regards to ensuring that the right people have firearms. How do you see that as a company like yourself developing moving forward and in light of what's happened recently?
Well, I don't have any statistics on hand for this regarding it, but with regards to being able to purchase and obtain firearms, yes, firearms, with the recent tragedy, the firearms were purchased legally. But when you start talking on the mental health side of things, there are laws that prohibit, it's called HIPAA laws regarding medical information for an individual that government just can't necessarily get because of the privacy issues. So when I'm for background checks, and there are background checks. I've been a concealed weapon. I've been in law enforcement for I was in law enforcement for 27 years. I have a concealed weapons permit or license here in the state of Florida, but every time I go to buy a gun, they still run a background check on me.
And that seems to be important. And I think, moving forward, I think the background checks have to be, as it seems to be from what people are calling for, a lot deeper and a lot more involved to ensure that only the right people, I mean, nobody wants to lose their Second Amendment rights, but only the right people should be allowed to have guns. Now, do you think then, from a point of view as a training organization, how would you be able to see bringing your training into it? Would you like to possibly see where everybody who buys a gun has to have regular training each year, or has to go through some sort of certification or something?
Well, as I've said for years, and as much as the state of Florida has embraced the Second Amendment and is classified as what's called a shall issue state, meaning if you meet a certain criteria established by the state, then they will have to issue you a concealed firearms license. With that being said, there's no established curriculum for the required education in the statute here in the state of Florida. There is no qualification standard established by the state of Florida for a concealed weapons license or concealed firearms license, which I think does every gun owner, everybody who has a concealed firearms license, a disservice. I with my military and law enforcement background, I'm of the mindset that every round that comes out of my muzzle, I own. By extension of that, every round that comes out of the muzzle of one of my clients or someone I've trained, I also own. That's the mindset I have. So I have, for my company, no matter which class you take of mine, there is a qualification standard that I establish that is in line with what law enforcement currently shoots here in the state of Florida once a year. And if you don't meet that standard, you don't get a certificate from me. And I just don't print certificates for people. I have a standard, I maintain that standard, and I keep my integrity and principles with it.
So you think then, Ron, I mean, obviously, I can't speak for other organizations as I don't know them, but it seems like to me that you're very, very proactive in closing up maybe holes that exist within the training aspect of people who are, wanting to learn how to use guns or to carry a concealed firearm. It seems that you're very proactive in ensuring that, even from your point of view, it's the right person.
My objective is not only for me to have confidence in my client's ability, but for my clients to walk away with some confidence. And I tell my clients at the end of every class, seek additional training. And I don't care if you come to Tango Firearms Academy, or if you go to some other company or instructor, just do your due diligence and vet them properly and make sure they're going to give you the proper information. But to seek out that additional training. Without training, the likelihood of being able to perform in a stressful situation is little to none. That's why law enforcement and military train constantly. And in reality, because of budget constraints and time constraints, even law enforcement doesn't train as much as they would like to with regards to especially firearms training and those high liability areas that they deal with on a daily basis.
Do you think, I mean, we mentioned it before, I don't see anywhere where any state, says that every year you must take another qualification. Do you think that would be a very proactive thing to do to make, that a law, so that everybody who has a firearm either has to retrain every year or every 2 years? I mean, do you do that, or?
Honestly, I think it would be almost impossible for every firearm owner to be required because, number one, not every gun owner has a concealed firearms license. But, and I will, I'm sure this statement will upset many of my colleagues that own or work for other training companies. I believe the state of Florida should have a training curriculum and a qualification standard to obtain a concealed firearms license. I also believe that there should be a refresher requirement during that licensing period. Keep in mind, Florida's concealed firearms license is good for 7 years. I'm not saying an annual qualification. It would be nice, especially from a training,
For your business.
yeah. Annual, but in reality, once every couple of years, a refresher or requalification just to maintain that standard.
Would you be, I mean, I know you have many people that come to you for concealed weapons training and various other aspects of training. Do you say to them, I know, and I understand that you say to them, you don't have to come to Tango Firearms, but keep your training up. But have you got something in place where you say to people, look, you can come to me once a year for a refresher, or, come to me regularly for, do you do top-up courses for people?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, what I usually do is, all of my courses are kind of building blocks. I have a basic firearm safety and familiarization course where there's no range time. That's probably more for someone that's just starting to get their feet wet in gun ownership and firearms. But in reality, even my concealed weapons permit course is the building block. It starts the foundation because it gives not only firearm safety and familiarization, it talks about Florida's laws and the application process for a concealed firearms license, as well as the fundamentals of marksmanship, and incorporates a qualification live fire exercise.
Have you seen, Rob, an increase in the people coming to you for training since all these, since all the atrocities and the disasters that we've had, first in Orlando, then in Vegas, now back in our own homeland in Florida? And have you seen more people wanting to learn?
I have. Of course, during election cycles, every 4 years, there's always an increase in inquiries and people attending. And I see upticks in people wanting to get trained and obtain their concealed firearms license after a tragedy like we just suffered here in Florida and after Las Vegas, and those inquiries and new clients, that always increases after something like that, unfortunately. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer that good guys with guns can stop bad guys with guns if they're in the right place.
Right. So there's a lot of examples out there where perpetrators have been stopped by people carrying concealed weapons and well, not concealed weapons. Let me back up, but concealed firearms. But in the same side, there's an argument for people that say, well, if you didn't have guns, there'd be no problems. So what do you say to that, to people that would say, well, if we didn't have any guns, full stop, whether it be an AR-15, a fully automatic weapon, what do you say to those people that say just get rid of them all?
Someone that is hell-bent on causing harm will find a way. it doesn't matter. Whether
They would
they
just
have
go into the
access to
black
guns,
market.
there's other ways. Someone that is determined to cause harm to people, they will find a way to cause that harm. In not necessarily with a gun. There's knives, there's baseball bats, there's other weapons of opportunity out there that you would be can cause some devastating injury without having a gun.
Let me ask you, in terms of in your past as a law enforcement officer, did you find that there were more issues with guns in the black market than there were with people that were legally carrying them? I mean, did you have many problems as an officer dealing with that side?
Well, I can say I worked for a very small municipal agency. Both of the police departments I've worked for were really small municipal agencies. And although we didn't see the gun running, I can tell you over the years, I took a plethora of stolen gun reports, which now these guns are on the streets. And that comes from not properly securing your weapons in your home.
So there's also a big issue with the security of a firearm for people that own them as well.
Yes, and it's Florida has a safe storage law that under certain conditions, the owner of that gun can be charged with a misdemeanor crime. And God forbid, should a tragedy occur as a result, even other charges beyond the violation of the safe storage law.
What would you say then now, moving forward, for Tango Firearms in the industry that you're in, and in light of all the things that's been happening over the years, where does Tango Firearms fit in this? What are you going to do? Are you going to change anything? How are you going to proactively help educate people moving forward?
My objective is to get people properly trained, not only on the fundamentals of marksmanship, but if they continue through my courses that I have, there's advanced firearms training where you learn how to draw from a holster, where you learn how to deal with weapons malfunctions. And I have a tactical class that teaches you how to deal with and with situational incidents, shooting from different firing positions, as well as learning how to draw and your firearm from a concealed position, and put you under stress. Just because you can stand and put rounds on the 10 ring standing at a firing line doesn't mean you're going to be able to do that in a violent confrontation where you have a lot of physiological things going on, to include an adrenaline dump, elevated heart rate, elevated respiration, tunnel vision, audio exclusion.
Wow! So you actually put your students in as they're developing under stress, so they
you can only, in my tactical class.
Yeah.
A lot depends with their health. But I can get someone's heart elevated. I can get the respiration up, so they can experience trying to put rounds and
under them
on
situation
target with that exposure.
So let me put you on the spot before we kind of finish off with this. You have, say, a woman who comes to you who has never used a firearm before in her life. Oh, and I'm only choosing that gender because a lot of women are frightened of firearms, or maybe it could be a guy who's scared of firearms. They've never dealt with a gun. They're terrified to use it, but they want to learn, and they want to learn to protect themselves. can you confidently take them from being terrified of it to actually being comfortable with that weapon and under stress being able to utilize it?
I believe I can. It's in the grand scheme of things, that description of a client is one of my favorites, because especially when I talk about the fundamentals of marksmanship, they listen intently, and then they put it into action on the range. And they take the time to start from the ground up with the fundamentals of marksmanship for every trigger pull. So yeah, I think I can, given the time, and on the range and putting the rounds on paper or on target.
That's awesome. Well, listen, how can people who are interested in truly learning to handle a firearm, to understand the laws, to be proficient, how can they get in touch with you, Rob, if they wanted to learn from you?
They can call me at 321-578-9351. They can find me at tangofirearms.com on the web, Tango Firearms Academy on Facebook.
And you're quite open to helping people and answering questions and getting
yes,
them.
And it's my phone's always on, and if I don't answer, leave a message. I'll call you back. Send me an email, info@tangofirearms.com. I'm more than happy to respond to you and be there for your training needs.
That's awesome. Rob, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's great to see an organization like yourself that is actually more proactive in training people in the right way and selecting the right people as well, getting them to that standard. Is there any one last word that you would like to say to anybody who is maybe looking to contact you, other than, or even regards to moving forward and training for Tango Firearms in the future?
If you have questions, ask. Know the laws and train. Train.
That's awesome. Rob, thank you very much for today, and God bless.
Thank you, Jacques. You have a good day.